Good evening everyone and welcome to MH Live on Sunday. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend and you've enjoyed the Jubilee celebrations. This evening I want to talk about the beggars on our streets. What do you do and what are your general feelings towards them? Is it something you share or do you keep your feelings to yourself? Do you walk on by or do you offer a helping hand? Hopefully the talk this evening will give you the food for thought. There, but for the grace of God, go I. The origin of the saying, there, but for the grace of God, go I, is actually unknown, but it has been in use since around at least the 1700s. It's sometimes shortened to there, but for the grace of God, or but for the grace of God. However it's expressed, there, but for the grace of God, go I, is a statement of humility and gratitude that acknowledges your own sinful nature and the need for God's grace. One of the earliest attributions of the saying is to John Bradford, an English reformer who supposedly said it as he watched people led to execution for their crimes. In a sense, he was saying, that could have been me, but for God's grace. In a more secular use, there, but for the grace of God, go I, can mean something like, I'm glad that didn't happen to me. In a way, the attitude of there, but for the grace of God, go I, is an antidote to judgmentalism. When we see someone who is down and out, who is suffering hardship, or who is reaping unpleasant consequences, we can respond in two basic ways. We can say, he deserves it and should have made better choices. Or we can say, there, but for the grace of God, go I. The first response is what Job's three friends ultimately chose. The second response shows empathy, as we acknowledge the kindness of God towards us and extend that kindness to the one in trouble. At the heart of the saying, there, but for the grace of God, go I, is an idea very much present in Scripture. The Apostle Paul describes God's grace in 1 Corinthians 15:9-10. For I am the least of the apostles, and do not even deserve to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God, but by the grace of God I am what I am, and his grace to me was not without effect. No, I worked harder than all of them, yet not I, but the grace of God that was with me. So what do you do when you walk past a beggar? If your first reaction is one of caution, that's okay. If your first reaction is one of putting extra space between yourself and the beggar, that's okay. If your first reaction is to look away from the beggar and try and avoid eye contact, that's okay. If your first reaction is to pretend they're not even there, that's okay. For many, walking past a beggar can be an indecisive time. We hear so many things about beggars that we naturally act cautious and may even have to think carefully before taking any action. In the past, when I was much younger and more naive, I never used to give money to a beggar. I was always told by my family not to. I was told that if I gave them money, they would spend the money on drugs and alcohol. So there I was. I was told to believe something when I was younger, and I was given a very good reason why. But then I made my own reasons of why not. It wasn't a question of whether what I was doing was right or wrong. It was a question of what felt right to me. It was an action that allowed me to feel like I was doing something for the greater good. I was doing something and helping people, which is my favourite thing in the world. So there I was, one lunchtime, walking past a beggar and feeling that initial insecurity. What should I do? Where should I look? How should I feel? Should I acknowledge them? Will I feel guilty if I walk by without giving them money? If I ignore them, maybe they'll disappear. Do any of those questions or feelings seem familiar to you? I was in Hanley. For those who are unaware, it's a town in Stoke-on-Trent, Staffordshire. A female beggar was sitting outside of a shop on the ground. She was blind in one eye. I gave her a couple of pounds and went into the shop, and she thanked me. Before I did, I smiled and knew that I wouldn't catch anything. When I walked away, I didn't think about what she would use the money on. I didn't feel like I did it out of pity. I didn't even feel like I was giving her any money. I was able to share something with this beautiful human soul. I didn't think about what clothes she was wearing or that she may hurt me. All I could think was that this soul was a child of God, just like me. It was very important to me to feel like my actions were not out of pity or guilt, but through my choosing and for a higher purpose. There were so many ways for me to look at the situation, but my favourite was to think of that soul having to track that couple of pounds by asking God, and I was the response. I visited Hanley several times during the coming months, and each time I saw her, I gave her a couple of pounds and we started to have short conversations. And she said to me one day, "You don't need to give me money every time you see me, you know." I said I knew, but I was doing it because I wanted to. However, one day I saw her in Hanley. It was a Saturday and I was with my husband, and she was standing near a shop with a blanket over her shoulders. I ran over to her and gave her a hug, not money, and asked how she was. She said she was fine and thanked me for the hug. She said, "I really needed that today." I've not seen her since. I hope she's okay though, because I know she's a recovering heroin addict. When you walk past a beggar, if your first reaction is one of caution, that's okay. But after you've overcome your caution, offer a smile. If your first reaction is one of putting extra space between yourself and the beggar, that's okay. But then walk over to them. If your first reaction is to look away from the beggar and try and avoid eye contact, that's okay. But then look at them as if that was you. If your first reaction is to pretend they're not even there, that's okay. But then acknowledge them fully and say hello. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the talk this evening and it's given you a bit of food for thought. If you've got any comments with regards to the people who are living on the streets at the moment, and you know of anybody who is actually helping them and that sort of information can be distributed, then do email me on mhlive1@yahoo.com. I hope you enjoyed the rest of your weekend and have a great week.